Okay, now that we understand the basics of the interface, shortcuts, how to move around in Blender and do some basic things, let's try to create a test scene, like a basic scene, and just go through the entire process of creating a render in Blender. Now we could just keep things the way they are, but make them look better. For example, we can hit Shift A to add in a plane, so mesh plane. Now S and drag to scale, so your plane is big enough. And also click on this one that is under and bring it up. Yeah, let's click on this cone and reduce the count to say 3. So it's just pile of 3. And let's try to bring everything down. So yeah, another important shortcut, as we are going through the entire process, I will discover more shortcuts to show you guys. Another important shortcut is the view, the kind of view that you're looking at. So if you hit 1 on your numpad, you would face the front view. So you'll be looking at the object, your entire scene from the front, from the y-axis. If you hit 3 on your numpad, you'll be looking at it from the side. So 1 is to look at it from the front, 3 is to look at it from the side, and 7 is to look at it from the top. So this is like a quick way to move around in your scene. So when you click 1, let's make sure everything is touching the ground. So this is not touching the ground. So let's just drag it down. Click on the cylinder and also drag it down. I like what is happening here. Let's go to the top view, clicking 7, and then click on the cylinder and bring it on the y-axis to where the torus is. So now the cylinder is inside the torus. Now what we can do is to click on the torus and S to scale it up. So we have the torus surrounding the cylinder. So I'm just trying to arrange things around to, to look like a cool basic scene. So let's click on this one, bring it here. Now let's decide where we want our camera to be. So we have our camera. If we hit 0 on our keyboard, we should be able to go into our camera view. And also, yeah, something very important. If you have hit 1, 3, 7, and 0, and nothing happens, then you need to make sure you have turned on emulate numpad. So to do that, just go to your preferences. You will spend some time in your preferences where you are installing add-ons and setting some things up. Go to edit, then preferences, and then input. And make sure emulate numpad is turned on. This is very important. If this is not on, you wouldn't be able to do what I've been doing with the shortcut of 1, 3, 7, and 0. Because your numpad is basically those numbers on your big keyboard. So if you have a very big keyboard that is very wide, that has those numbers on the side, then you don't need to do any of this. But if you have a laptop keyboard, like a basic laptop keyboard or something like this is a simple keyboard that doesn't have a numpad by the side. The numbers are just the one up here. So make sure you have emulate numpad selected. Now you can click 0 and snap into the camera view and out of the camera view. It's very, very useful. Now let me show you a trick to setting your camera view. Click on your middle mouse button and move around until you see something that is nice. So let's have it somewhere here. So this is our y-axis. So we are looking right in front of our y-axis, something like this. And hit Ctrl plus Alt plus 0. Now what that would do is to tell the camera to assume that view as the camera view. So now the way we were looking is where our camera is. Our camera has now moved and is right here. So in our camera view, something you can also do is to click on the camera itself and then use G to move around, R to rotate. And I don't think you can scale your camera, so you can only move around and you can only rotate the camera. So let's move it around and make sure our objects are in the center like this. And you can also mess with the object from the camera view. For example, we can click here, click on the plane and scale it on the x-axis. We can scale it on the y-axis. And Shift D to duplicate it like we usually do. But instead of clicking on your left click so you can register it, what you should do is to hit R and then X. So you can now rotate it on the x-axis, the duplicate. So something else you can do after hitting R and X is to hit a number. So it will rotate along the x-axis with that number. So if we hit RX 90, for example, it's going to rotate specifically at 90 degrees. So make sure this one is selected and drag it backwards. So it's like our background. So let's go back to the camera view. And we can see, this is what we see. We see all our objects here. So we can move things around. You could just play with this and create the kind of scene you want. Can move this in the front, can move this to the side, we can move this here, we can move this back here, and then we have our entire scene. Now let's go to the material view. Remember we talked about material preview, so let's click here to go to the material preview. Now here, another shortcut. If you hit Z on your keyboard, it brings out this menu. So hitting Z and then moving your mouse would select either your solid, wireframe, material, or rendered view. So that is the quick way to go through these settings. Instead of moving your mouse all the way over here, you can just hit Z and move your mouse to the left, then click wireframe. Now we're in the wireframe view and we can see everything like wireframes. Hit Z and click on solid. I can see everything in solid view. Hit Z and click on material and you can see everything in the material preview. Another way to do it is, instead of clicking, it's even faster to just hit Z and slide your mouse very fast. So if I hit Z and slide my mouse to the left very fast, like at the same time, it changes. So I don't even need to click. So Z right, it goes to the solid view. Z down, it goes to the material. Z left. So I'm just sliding my mouse. So let's go to the material view. Now you can see the pink material we created for this back then. Now let's give different colors to the rest of this. So for this one, make sure you go to your material property, click on new, and let's make this one blue. Click on this, click on new, and just give it different colors. You're just trying to explore around here. Now let's give this one new material. Let's give this a red. Now let's change the yellow to orange. So click on the torus, come to the material, the color, this base color, click on it and choose another color, orange. So it changes. Now another thing is each of these materials, so this is pink, blue, green, orange, red. That is 5 materials. If you come here in the material properties and you click on this drop down right here, you would see all your materials. So they have different names. Material 1, 2, 3, 4 with all the colors. So if you don't want to create new materials every single time, you can just give the material to the object. For example, if I want to make this stack of cones to be pink, I just need to click on it, go to material, and instead of clicking new, click on the drop down here and select the pink one, material. You can also change the name of your material by clicking on it and changing it to pink. So let's do it for the rest. For this icosphere, let's select red. For this one, let's select blue. This one, let's select pink. This one, let's select green. And this final one, let's give it a new material and make this one black. So to make it black, you just need to move this down. So this controls how bright our colors are. So up is very white, very bright, and down is very dark black. So even if we change it to pink, we can bring it down to make it a very dark pink or bring it up to make it a very bright pink. So since we don't want it to have any color, let's click the middle, the center. You can also drag the saturation down so it has no color. Then you can drag this down so it's black. So we have all our objects. Let's go into the camera view. Now you can see this is our shot. This is our 3D scene with different objects in there. Now let's click on the floor. Make sure the floor is selected, which is this plane, the floor plane. And let's also make the floor plane black. So come here and choose the black color, black material. Yeah, so this is black and this is white. So let's go into the camera view again using 0. Now you can see this is our scene. Let's click on the camera itself. You can also click on the camera from your outliner here. This is it. And then we can use Z to move it up. Now you have our scene with various objects. Something else you can do is to change the details of the camera, so the properties of the camera. Now the camera doesn't have any material, so you wouldn't see material here, but what we can see here is the camera properties. So if you click on this camera icon, we can mess with different things. So if you have done any photography in the past, you would know what these things mean. But even if you haven't, they are simple to understand. The focal length is basically how zoomed in you want your camera to be. So if I bring this down to like something like 16, you can see that our objects are very far. Look, this is the camera. This is the rectangle of the camera. and at 16 is very far. And if we bring it up to say 105, you can see it's very close. So some things are not even part of the camera anymore. It's just showing only this side. So let's bring it even closer to like 200 and something. You can see it's even more zoomed in. So let's take it back to 50. Yeah. So now this is the materials. So something else about the material apart from the color would be the roughness. So very simply, roughness is basically how shiny your material is. So the more rough it is, the less shiny it is. So if you have a material that is not shiny, not reflective, it has a high roughness. And if you have a material that is very reflective, something that looks like a mirror, it has a low roughness. So let's practicalize that. If we click on this torus right here, this donut, and we right click and shade smooth, so it's now quite smooth. We can also do the modifier thing, modifier, generate subdivision surface to make it even smoother. Let's increase this to 2. Yeah, it looks very smooth now. So we can click on this orange material, go to material properties. Now we can see other things here apart from color. We can see metallic. It's currently at 0. But if I increase this to 1, you can see it looks very metallic now. It looks like a metal. If I bring it down, it looks more like rubber, like plastic. Same thing for roughness. If I bring it up, it looks like it's not shiny at all. So if we bring this down from 1 to 0, now you can see it's looking very shiny, pretty much like a mirror. You can even see some trees, some reflections inside of it. So let's make this 0.1. So just type in 0.1. So that is a very shiny surface. And let's make the red one also shiny. Yeah. So click on the icosphere and then make the red one shiny. So bring this roughness down to like 0.1. And also let's make it a metal. So let's increase the metallic up to 1. So you can see it's acting like a metal now. You can see how it's reflecting. Yeah. Let's click on this guy too, this blue one, and make it a metal and make it shiny. Cool. The last thing I'm going to do is to click on the floor, this black floor, and reduce the roughness so it is shiny. So it looks like a shiny black tiled floor. Cool. Now this is how everything looks like in the material view. But if you want to see the final look of it, you have to look at the rendered view. So let's go to our rendered view here. You can either click here, or if you remember, Z and click up. Now this is the rendered view. Now if I click on this light, this is the light here that's always been here. Or you can also click on it here in the outliner. If I click on G and I move my mouse around, you can see things are happening now. You can see the shadows on the wall is changing. It's changing position, and you can also see how the light affects the objects. So if I bring the light close to these cones, you can see the cones are now very bright. If I bring the light far, the cones are now dark, but this monkey is now very bright. And the same way that we added different objects, we can also add different lights. So Shift A and lights, we can add a point light. So this is a different point light, just like the other one. And we can change the details of the light. So this is one light and the power is set to 1000 watts. We can also click on this one and set it to 1000 watts. So we have 2 lights in the scene now. Now you see our scenes are looking even better. Let's go to our camera view. You can see now we have a nice looking shot. You can see the reflection, the highlights on this donut. You can see some highlights on this sphere. It's looking better now. This red ball is not getting a lot of light, so let's add another light. So the same way we can duplicate objects, we can also duplicate the light. So let's hit 7 to go to the top view, Shift D to duplicate, and bring the lights over here. So now we can have a light that is close to this red object, so you can see the reflection on top of it. And now we can also increase the intensity of this light. So let's make this one 2000, so it's twice as bright. And yeah, now the final type of lighting we'll be talking about in this basic section would be HDRI lighting, and HDRI stands for high dynamic range image. Now in your browser, you just need to go to polyheaven.com/HDRIs, So HDRIs are basically environment lighting. So as you can see here, we have different types of environment. This looks like an open road. This looks like a desert. This looks like some green grass garden area. This looks like under a bridge. So real life environments that were captured in the moment that we can now use to light our project. So there are different options you could get from here. Let's try the Victorian sunset. So click here and download 2K HDR. Press download. Let's go back to Blender and go to world setting here in our properties, and then go to color, click on this yellow icon here and choose environment texture. Now our light source is coming from that HDRI image, but we don't have any image there. That's why you're seeing all this purple lighting going on here. So click on open and find the file that you just downloaded and open the image. And now you can see that you have the actual environment in your scene. So this lighting is a lot more realistic than just putting point lights in your scene. So let's hit 0 to go back to the camera view. Now you can see how much better this looks. Let's delete this light. We don't need this one anymore. You can even delete all the lights if you want, or you can keep them in. So let's click on this floor and change the color from black. I'm not liking this black right now. Change it from black to like a light blue material. So let's take this up higher and choose a very bright blue. Yeah, and choose the same material for the wall. So pick a bright blue. Yeah, so it's also the same material for the monkey. Let's also change our camera angle. So click on the camera, GZ to bring it down so it's closer to the floor, and RX to rotate it on the X-axis. So we are now facing up. So let's do that again. GZ to bring it even lower, then RX to make it face upwards. So this is our scene. This is our beautiful rendered scene. I think we can take out this light. We don't need this light anymore. X to delete this one, X to delete this one. So for VFX, mostly 90% of our lighting will be done with HDRI, except it's either an indoor scene or we are trying to put highlights on some specific parts of our product. Now, this is a really cool scene that you should be proud of if you're an absolute beginner. Let's click on our camera. Make sure you select just the camera. I think it's easier to just select it here. Then come to camera, come to viewport display. Then this pass par 2 settings, let's increase it to 1. What this does is it makes the outside of the camera invisible so we can focus on what we are actually seeing. So this is our image right here. You can see the shadows. Our shadows are casted on the wall, but then we can't see shadows on the floor. We can fix that. So let me introduce you very quickly to render engines if you are an absolute beginner. So we can see we are in the rendered view. Just for a quick refresher, we can go to the wireframe view where everything is basically looking like wireframes. We can go to the solid view where everything is gray and you can just focus on the actual mesh. Or you can go to the material preview where it doesn't show you how the result will look like, but it shows you how the materials should look like. It's great for texturing and trying to figure out what your material should look like. Then finally, we can go to the render view, which is the realistic version where you have your shadows and everything. Now in Blender, if you come here to render under your properties tab, render, you would see render engine and you would see Eevee. Eevee is like Blender's fastest render engine that gives you really fast results, but you're sacrificing hyperrealism when you're using Eevee. So I'll recommend you use Cycles. Cycles is the more realistic render engine. That is all you need to know for now. So click on Eevee. There's a drop down. You see Eevee, Workbench, and Cycles. Workbench is basically just like rendering in solid mode, and then click Cycles. Now you will notice that everything looks very different. You know, when you click Eevee, it looks nice, but then we can't see our shadows or reflections at the bottom. But when you click Cycles, things look really good. Now you can see the reflections at the bottom and everything. So let's adjust that. At the bottom, let's go to our material, click on the floor. You don't want it to be this reflective. So increase our roughness from this to something like 0.25. or 0.3. Yeah, so this is our final render. As an absolute beginner, this is what we have been able to create. So I've learned a lot in this process of creating this very simple shot. So I've learned about lighting, about adding new objects, about the entire interface. This is just an exercise for absolute beginners to, you know, get themselves warmed up before we can go into the actual VFX creation and VFX animation. So I hope you have learned something from this as an absolute beginner. I hope you now know how to move around in Blender and what some different settings means and how you can change colors, how you can make something shiny, how you can move your camera and all that, rotation, location, scale. I hope you now have that on lock because I'll be referencing a lot of these things going forward in the course. Now, very quickly, there are something called add-ons, and add-ons are basically extra software that you can add to Blender to make your work easier. So there is this one particular add-on that everybody needs, anyone that uses Blender, and it's called Node Wrangler. It's basically an add-on that comes with Blender. You don't need to buy anything, you don't need to install anything. It already comes with Blender, you just need to turn it on. So go to Edit, Preferences, and Add-ons, then search here for Node Wrangler and make sure this is checked. After you have checked that this is checked, come down here and hit Save Preferences. Go to Solid View, and one more thing I need you to change with your Blender settings is frame selected, especially if you don't have a keyboard that has a numpad. You know, we enabled emulate numpad so we can move from different views, 1, 3, 7, 0, remember? Now we need to change one more thing, because a lot of people ask how I'm able to just snap to a particular object, because you might want to focus on one object. And when you have the object selected, you can just press one thing on your keyboard and Blender goes straight to that object that you have selected. It just finds it and focuses on it. Now that is called frame selected. So go to Edit, Preferences. If you don't have a keyboard with a numpad, this will be very important for you. Go to Key Map, then search by name. Search for frame selected. Now for each of these frame selected, you can see in the 3D view, dope sheet, graph editor, each of them, just come here, click on it and press full stop. So anywhere you see numpad full stop, change it to just full stop. So I've already changed mine. That is why you're not seeing any numpad full stop here, but just make sure everything, click on it and change it to full stop. Just click on full stop and then save your preferences here. What that helps you with is whenever you hit full stop, whatever object is selected, you just snap to it. You just go straight to it. It is very useful, especially when we start talking about the graph editor and going around the graph editor. You could easily snap to a vertex, snap to an edge, snap to a node. So yeah, that would be super helpful to you.